So we are live now with Dr. Venkat. So so let me introduce Dr. Venkat first. So it's a great pleasure to have you here. You have found time on a Saturday, so nothing like it. So uh, big thank you to you for the entire community. So Dr. Venkata Pilangi is the founder and CEO of Scribble Data, a venture-backed enterprise MLOps feature store company with offices in Toronto and Bangalore. Scribble has customers across sectors such as fintech, healthcare, and edtech, and geographies across geographies. Dr. Pilangi is well regarded in his community as an expert and was featured in number of forums like ODSC, PyCon on data, privacy, technology, and startups. He has a BTech from IIT Mumbai and PhD from USC. So today he will speak on bottlenecks in scaling data science use case and SubML. So I'll just give a brief introduction on what is the theme, so you get to know him better and you can ask your questions here. We will take up one by one questions. So the demand for data science work products is growing fast across organizations. However, structural bottlenecks are preventing the scaling of the teams and their work. This includes economics, architecture, and technology preferences. In this session, we will discuss about the evolution of sub-ML as a niche within the ML market itself. So now it's we are joined by Dr. Venkata Pilangi. I won't take any more time. The co-founder and CEO of Scribble Data, a feature app store company, to discuss the way forward for organizations for scaling data. Thank you, and up to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Sharmishta. I remember our conversation from several years back around data science, the organization, and things like that. I think what has happened in the last few years is that we have had the opportunity to go look inside organizations, understand more about the ML life cycle, as well as what organizations are doing, and so on. So I'm hoping that I can share a few insights from all of those conversations now and where we are in the journey. But before that, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to the community. I presume audience can interrupt. This is intended to be very informal. I'm an academic by training. I like giving complicated talks that nobody understands. So you should stop me if I say some mumbo jumbo that you don't follow. Okay, so there has been one question that has bothered us for a few years now, which is that massive amounts of investment is going into machine learning and data infrastructure. How come we don't have machine learning everywhere? Right, in every nook and corner. Go to your finance team, they're still doing on Excel. Their projections are still Excel formulae. Or you go to your e-commerce returns, and they're struggling to understand who is returning when and why. So the question that bothered us is, why is this happening? Right, what exactly is going on here? And as a machine learning feature store company, we actually got, because we are a core part of that infrastructure, the machine learning infrastructure. It gave us an opportunity to talk to many teams to understand how they're structured, how they're framing the problems, how their processes look, and so on. And what we realized is that there are series of bottlenecks. It's not an accident, the situation that we have today, which is massive infrastructure has been deployed, but they're being vastly underutilized. Or that we have large number of these data scientists, but we still don't see the applications of data science in the organization. So we've been, in the last few months, we've been getting out of our away from our laptop and talking to various communities about how we are seeing this, and looking for some sort of conversation around it. Okay, so the what has in my opinion, there are three basic reasons why we don't see ML anywhere, everywhere. Right, we large e-commerce fintech platforms, they have large teams, 10, 20, 50, 100 people, data science teams. But there is a long tail of users within the organization who don't get anything. Imagine the city manager of Uber, right? How much ML is actually available for that individual to make the decisions on a day-to-day basis? Or if you're a category manager of a D2C direct-to-consumer brand, how much input you as a category manager have to decide the depth of the category, to understand the particular customer base to which your category is interesting, and so on. And there are three bottlenecks. And the first bottleneck is uh, disconnect for them from the business. A lot of data scientists are not looking at they're not deeply engaged with the business side of the organization. They are framing their work as either building the infrastructure or helping with the modeling. But the life on the business side, whether it is operations, whether it is finance, whether it is marketing, all of these are very messy lives that they have in all of these businesses. And data scientists have uh, tried to stay away and make sure that the problems and the approaches are relatively clean. That actually doesn't work, because what ends up happening is you end up building something that is not fit for the context. So this was told to me by a very large financial products company. You would know the name if I tell them, but basically they say the data sciences are coming back after 7 months and giving us some product. First of all, it is not relevant. Secondly, I if it comes after 7 months, my problems have changed by then. So so the first problem is the engagement with the business side. Shall I hold off before?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
You can answer this question. This question has come up, sir. What do you think is the evolution of DevOps with data science in the industry, and how do you think is the new way of deployments and also other operations in data like annotation and training?
Yeah, these are, somewhat, there are two separate questions within this single one, right? The DevOps. So this, let me just talk about the DevOps. So what has happened is that as data science started getting picked up in the organizations, the desire for robustness and predictability of this service has become more and more important. But I think it will be way more challenging than the traditional DevOps. The software in the software engineering world, you write applications to a specification. In most machine learning situations, you don't know the specifications. We don't know what model to build. We are discovering along the way. We are discovering what challenges exist in data, what models actually work, don't work. It's like a search process. The problem with DevOps is that it assumes a certain stability that I believe doesn't exist. So a much more appropriate model is one of something that looks more like agile, something that is responsive on a continuous basis. DevOps requires a degree of stability that I think does not exist, except in some core problems. If you're Uber, expected time of arrival, there may be some stability there. But Uber has 5,000 models. This same stability does not apply to like 4,900 of them, right? So that is the first part. As far as the data annotation is concerned, I think it will dramatically grow in the next few years. And the reason is very simple. The When we started data science a few years back, we thought that we could throw data at a statistical algorithm, and the algorithm will do the magic for us. What we have realized in the last few years is that data determines more of the outcome and the behavior. And now we are trying to control the data sets themselves, right? As a feature store company, we are in the data set business, and we have seen the steady shift. Earlier people would say, this is not algorithms, what can you actually do to help improve algorithms, and so on. Now the conversation has shifted to, okay, I feature store, this whole data preparation business is very important. Now what all can we pack into this feature store? And annotations and everything else is also coming into the same picture, because this is about really increasing the richness of the data and giving the models great input to be able to outperform. So they stopped iterating on the models and they started now iterating on the data, right? The richness, the quality, the availability, the scale of data, and so on. and the process has just started, in my opinion. And because this is very use case specific, I see a very significant growth in this whole space. We have a few customers in this broad direction. The size of scale.ai is not an accident. You should see more of them, especially domain specific ones, right? So this is again this is actually great segue into my second bottleneck. So what has happened is that,
Should we also talk about some use cases? Would you like to highlight your experience of some of the use cases that you handled in SubML,
okay,
or you
so
will?
we'll
Mm,
we'll talk about the use case, and in the use case, in the context of use case, I'll tell you the bottlenecks, right? Why
okay.
the use case is being solved the way we are solving it. See,
Mhm,
if you look at the category manager of, let's say, furniture products on an e-commerce site like Amazon or Flipkart, it's a fairly large business, and they see lots of issues. They see issues with respect to forecasting the demand. They see issues with respect to returns, with respect to customer experience, uh, the time, expected time of delivery, and so on, right? Now the our use cases tend to be outside the core data science. If you look at Amazon's core data science team, they would work on search, for example, the search on the website, right? Or the natural language interface.
mhm,
But within the organization, there are these long tail of users, like this category manager of the furniture's product, who is not able to get attention of the core team, because the core team is looking at high value, long term, high investment projects, and these keep going on for years and years and years, because they are like continuously being tuned every single day, and they require a very high degree of skill. It is not very uncommon for us to find Stanford or Berkeley PhD sitting there working out some of these language models and search attribution models and things like that. That is the nature of the beast. But this poor guy who is running the furniture division does not get attention. Our use cases, Scribble's own use cases, fall into this long tail of users within the organization, as well as the long tail of needs, machine learning needs. The problem with
mhm,
this furniture guy is that the scale at which the business is operating has gone way beyond your BI systems, way beyond your Excels, and so on, right?
mhm,
They need modeling to come to help them with everyday decisions. Should I be investing more in this subcategory of the furniture? How is my customer base changing, which involves customer modeling? Are there very unusual customers, which is outliers? Are there Can I benchmark various markets of my furniture, right? How is the South Indian market different from East African market, and so on, right? So there is so what we see is a very rapid growth of ML in the trenches, and there is a different phrases that are being discussed, that are being thrown about for this particular space. One is called analytical ML. This came from Tecton, which is another big feature stone company out of the valley. Then there are other people who proposed a phrase like ML at reasonable scale. We ourselves call it sub machine learning. Machine learning, that is we split the space into big machine learning, which is the long term search like projects, and sub machine learning, which is short term, very decision oriented machine learning. But these are like anywhere from 70 to 90% of your use cases fall into this particular category, right? So now,
mhm,
what was happening here is that our understanding. So one of the bottlenecks that came about was that our ideas about how to approach this machine learning came from Fang, right? They or Uber. They said that this is how they built the infrastructure. This is how we set the organization and things like that. The problem is that that is not applicable in 99% of the world, right? They don't have the same skill set, they don't have the same histories, they don't have the same technology stack, experience, clarity, and so on. So last few years was really about learning about this fact that the we cannot actually project the experience of the Facebooks or the Googles of the world to the rest of the world, and we have to think originally from scratch and come up with our own methods. And in 2022, it took almost 5 years. Michelangelo, which is the machine learning platform of Uber, was announced in 2017 or so. Um, so in 2022, I think there is a very significant correction that has happened. Now we are not necessarily looking at Uber as the only answer, and it is one of the many designs that are available for you to look at if you're a let's say a logistics company in Brazil, right? This is one of the many options that you have, and you from first principles you are actually asking what is appropriate for my context and for my set of problems. So the second bottleneck which we are shedding right now was a basically the conceptual frameworks that we just inherited from the fangs, and we are finally dropping it, and a sense of realism is coming in. So suddenly they're realizing in 2022, the community as a whole is realizing that we need more ideas at the table, right? To meet the many different spaces. There are startups, there are tech-oriented startups, there are operations-oriented startups, there are mid-stage companies with a lot of legacy, there are very large companies with very complex politics, and so on. It's the same solution doesn't actually work in all of these places. So now new frameworks are are being thought about, and they will be much more actively discussed in the next year or 2 years, in my opinion, because we now have realized that simple copy pasting of Uber doesn't work. We need more intellectual input to the whole process. And the second thing that has happened also is that the expectation of magic from the enterprises is also gone. So now they are very realistic about this, and that's what makes me very optimistic about the next few years. The conversations that we are having have seen a dramatic shift in the last 2 years. I am
So
not. I presume you're keeping track of other folks that.
yeah. Yeah, so there are no more
Okay.
questions currently. So we can if you have more use cases, you can discuss, or the challenges actually you faced. What I understood that is SubML is a category within that email, means we are quickly
Correct.
solving the problem within a furniture. What is the subcategory? If I want to quickly prototype and solve it, that will help
Correct.
through this.
And so there are different flavors of machine learning infrastructure that you need. There is one that you need for very large scale productionization. Think of large Kubernetes clusters, Spark clusters, and so on. Right. That is one kind. Then there are these short-term experimental kind of frameworks. I made a model. I want to test it on near real data, but for sufficiently long time before I go through the very expensive process of productionization. Then there is the third kind of machine learning problems where we are saying that we assume a human in the loop. The purpose is to augment the decision making process that the end user has. That's a different kind of machine learning. So what is happening is the machine learning itself is splitting up into multiple spaces depending upon who has what kind of need, and appropriately new stacks are coming into pictures, and ours is one of those stacks. I expect there to be at least 4 or 5 different kinds of stacks over a period of time. So this is a journey, and what I foresee over the next few years is that very vigorous debate on what kinds of problems are actually realistically solvable, and what is a good way, a very efficient, viable way of solving all of them. One of the big challenges that organizations today have is that when they're copying that idea of Uber, they're copying the entire stack and the technology approach. Lots of Dockers, Lambdas, real time, Presto, Hive. I mean, all of these terms are there, right? These are all fairly heavy technology pieces. Now, it works if you are Uber and you have like about a 200 people team, data engineering team to manage. But let's say your entire data team is 3 people,
Mhm.
then it doesn't make sense for you to copy paste that, right? So people are increasingly making trade-offs. For example, one of the things that we did is that if the asks of our customer were, we need a machine learning model that, but from concept to the time it is being used every day, I have about 3 to 4 weeks only. Right now, you have to fit the entire life cycle, and you have to fit the processes and tools to make it work within these kinds of constraints, right? Relatively lower skill constraints, relatively tight time frames, varying data
Mm-hmm.
quality, and so on. So you, what we ended up doing is from scratch built out a ML stack that is actually geared towards outcomes as opposed to technology. We are not interested in these pieces for their own purpose. We will take whatever scheduler that is available if necessary, whatever DAG processor if necessary. But the goal is the outcome, which is that the customer needs ML output to help them every single day, and you got about 3 to 4 weeks end to end, and you have to do this repeatedly for like case of use case after use case after use case, right? And the outcomes really drove how we are thinking about how to approach this, what technology makes sense, doesn't make sense, how to actually deliver, and so on. And we encountered new problems in the process. One of
Mm-hmm.
the problems that we had was knowledge management. So the when you're a small team, what happens is that if one person from your team leaves, that is actually that rocks the boat. And so the customers started coming to us and saying, "Can you do something that will actually capture all of the tacit knowledge that is there in the process of building this machine learning product of theirs?"
So I have a question. So what is this asset knowledge? Is it the about the processes or the data inside that metadata? What is actually you mean by asset knowledge?
Eh, tacit, tacit, TACIT,
Tacit
not
knowledge. Okay.
tacit knowledge. That means,
Uh,
see, uh, when you're building a machine learning product, right? Let's say you predict the returns in this furniture case, that building of the model reflects of a lot of your experience, your understanding of what furniture market is, what kinds of target customers we are actually looking at, what data challenges do I have within the organizations, which actually out of the many algorithms, which ones work, which ones did not work, what are the risks associated with each of these algorithms, and so on. See, as long as data science remains where the output is the chart, the world looks a certain way. The moment you are a furniture category manager and you want to use machine learning, you are concerned about a whole lot of things. And this one, you spend a lot of resources to discover all of this. Now, the challenge is that now this is all sitting in your engineers and your data scientists' minds. When they leave your organization, you actually have to rediscover all of that same process, same bits of information again. So our customers who tend to be mid market, think of 300 people organizations and so on, they basically were very concerned about losing a lot of this knowledge that they have spent a lot of valuable time, effort, and money discovering. They said, what all can you do?" So the natural thing for us to say, yeah, you have these wikis and GitHub and all of those things. What's the problem? It's like, no. There is more to it. The challenge is that when, let's say, there is a production model and a production pipeline that is actually running every day, and let's say it breaks, you need all of these knowledge to be available at that time in the place where you are actually doing the debugging. The fact that it is there somewhere on Confluent, that doesn't help you, because you first have to figure out where it is and what all information is there to begin with. So they wanted, so for the first time, we started integrating with Loom, and we are also thinking about TikTok and all of these things. You wouldn't think that these things are actually related to machine learning, but it made complete sense for us to integrate because these are natural storytelling interfaces. When the developer is actually writing out the pipeline, we want them to tell a story about what were they actually thinking when they were doing the pipeline. And if it breaks, what do we do? Right? Imagine, let that person actually express. And now that becomes part of your knowledge base. And when you look at the pipeline or the model, that bit of information is readily available within that context, right? So this came from the reason this came about is that machine learning stopped being a lab product and it started going into the real world. In the real world, we have messy data, we have messy problems, lots of uncertainty, deep domain knowledge, which can't be ignored, which should not be ignored. And we have all of these people, process, and organizational issues. So when you are building this data science solution, it needs to be fit for purpose. It needs to be fit for context. These are two big ideas that we actually try and evangelize as much as possible. A lot of the technology is not being used because the data scientists and the machine learning engineers have not sufficiently thought about who is going to use it and why are they going to use it and how are they going to use it, and making it possible for them to consume. And so the evolution of this space itself can go from there are some extreme users like Fang, which told us that look, there is immense value for machine learning and this is the way to do it. Slowly the rest of the world is one after the other, we are learning to do it correctly and do it in a creative and a different way, because what works for Google doesn't work for most people. Most people cannot attract the degree of talent that Google has. So once I think the heavy lifting is done, I think in the last 5 years through failures, because a lot of the people copy pasted the ideas, it didn't work. Now I see a sense of seriousness. I see a sense of realism in the conversations, and now we are getting all the stakeholders, whether it is from the business side who are on the problem formulation and the use of this information, from a developer side who are actually generating and managing some of this data. All of those people are now starting to come to the table. But this has been a very expensive learning process for most organizations. I know of a
Organization.
lot of conflicts that are happening right now in the enterprises because the expectations were sky high for this machine learning, and the data scientists and machine learning, the data teams were somewhat siloed. They did not actively engage the businesses, and they were building too complex a technology. So finally, all of those things are getting resolved, especially with the downturn in funding and so on. Now the emphasis on relevance has dramatically increased, right? So if you're building a model,
So,
let's
so
let's understand
previously
why you're
models,
building it.
so previous models were not measured on metrics, is it, or what did they lack? They didn't interact
So
with business. Uh-huh.
a lot of the metrics were around the model metrics, AUC
Okay.
curves, accuracy, prediction quality, all of those kinds of things. Now, what businesses are saying is that that is all your internal metrics. That doesn't matter to me. The question is, did you reduce the returns from 28% to 26%?
Okay. Okay. Mhm.
Right? So what matters is that suddenly you realize that in order to move that needle by about 2%, you need to do a lot more things before, afterwards, on the side, and you have to go like your understanding of the model requirement better be very accurate, right? Because otherwise it won't move, right? You can't say that I will live in my siloed world. So you really have to understand the economics of the furniture business for you to build the right model. And you may actually choose not to build your deep learning RNN based LSTM whatever model, and you might actually go with a simple rule based system,
System.
which will get you all the a lot of the way. Because one of the problems that you will immediately encounter is when you are making a recommendation, you have to explain to the stakeholders why you are making that recommendation. The more complex the model, the more complex that conversation is going to be. So you will bias your choice of technology and the models towards something that is more consumable, because you are evaluated on how you're moving outcomes, not on how many models you have made, or not how complex this model is, and so on. They all look good on the resume, right? So that is what I call as realism. Earlier, it was a nice shiny object. Companies would go around chest thumping, saying how big a data science team there is. Now the conversation is shifting to, okay, I have a very impactful data science team, and I have cut this metric in this business metric in this way. I've improved this other business metric in this way, top line, bottom line, sideways, reduced hiring, whatever business cares about. So that changes how you build models, what models you build, when you build, and how you how you actually structure your life cycle overall. For example, the pressure on timelines is coming because of this. The furniture category head is not interested in something that you'll give 6 months afterwards. He'll say, okay, let's talk after 6 months, right? He or she is interested if you actually have a deliverable in realistic time frame, maybe 1 month, 2 months, and they're okay with incremental answers. They don't need optimal allocation of resources or optimal prediction, anything. They
Day one.
want to do better than what is today, right? What they're doing today, right? And every one of these has meaning for them, and they become the champions. There is enough inefficiency as well as resources in the business side to support all of this work. It is just that the alignment needs to happen now, and that is, I see that happening more and more with every passing day. And I think that is a good thing, right? Business data science is a business function. Data science exists to move the business metrics, right? It doesn't have its own independent agenda, right?
Yeah. So Venkat, one question. So you have, since you have talked about that rule-based system. Now these days, what I see is data scientists fresh out of college, or maybe few years of experience, are very, they have learned something, right? They first go into the model, as you have also understood by this time. But I
Yeah.
want to understand, how do you think that rule-based systems can help? Can we use tacit knowledge to build IPs and all? How we create proper knowledge management systems?
Yeah, I think companies are realizing this and they're getting organized. So in my opinion, it starts from the culture of having open conversations about learnings, having very streamlined way of documenting, sharing that knowledge. So it's not a surprise that Airbnb, for example, has its Airbnb University internally, and so on. So data business is knowledge business, right? What is data science at the end of the day? It is basically trying to understand, using data as the vehicle to understand what business the enterprise is in, how the what the customers want, and keep bridging these things on a continuous basis, right? Now, I think what has been lacking until now is this realization that this entire process. How do you put this entire data, your own internal ecosystem of people, process, technology? Uh, how do you put together itself is a creative process. It is your IP, right? What is the difference between two e-commerce companies? The way they're structured, the way the data teams are structured, what they look at, why this model and not that model, how do they actually develop the models over a period of time. This is all IP, right? That they have developed over a period of time. So first thing is they're recognizing that data, this tooling, the process, the feature engineering, especially the data preparation, is where a lot of IP is, because that is where you're embedding a lot of your transformation rules. Your e-commerce has the same transactions as any other e-commerce company. The way you process it is different. That is the reflection of your knowledge, right? So first, the recognition has happened. Second, the tools are still not yet there, but I see a significant move to incorporate more and more of these tools. I'm very gung ho about these voice interfaces, video interfaces, and so on, right? Because we need to. It helps with the asynchronous communication between the team. um, when they're slightly larger, they can have a formal structured program like the Airbnb University, but there is no silver bullet for this. You have to do everything. You
Full
it's
stack.
you You have to have a very disciplined team. You have to have tooling. You have to have these additional enablers for capturing the knowledge, and so on. You have to do everything. And the large companies, this is what Google and other companies, I think, know well. They have learned over a period of time, in my opinion, that other companies are just realizing. They thought that it was about the tools. It wasn't about the tools. It was about the uh, overall way they were organized. So I
So
can
there
see
is
that.
a question. Yeah. So
Yeah,
how is
Vishwa.
the modern day algorithm evolving? How are the ways in which edge deployment going to be developed? There's a question by Vishwas Narayan. Thanks, Vishwas, for asking this question. So
Um, how are the ways? I think, I mean, we keep interacting with this tiny ML folks who want to deploy models on the edge and things like that. At least the sense that I get from all of that is it is very, very domain specific. If you're doing edge audio, it looks very different. If you're doing signal processing of images on edge of a certain volume, then it looks different. Sometimes the edge is defined as a Raspberry Pi, which is very low capacity processor, or the edge could be your traffic outpost on the border, right, or the periphery. That means you actually have power, you have a laptop also sitting there. So the way I see this one evolving is that there will be many configurations over a period of time, right, depending upon the constraints of resources, complexity, the speed with which you have to react, and so on. So you will see many micro stacks emerging. One micro stack which makes a certain set of assumptions, another micro stack which makes a different set of assumptions, and so on, because a lot of this modeling is now being pushed out to the edge. But one reason I expect this to be somewhat slow over a period of time is that the complexity has dramatically increased the moment you put these models out there on the edge devices.
device.
And so the life cycle management of these models itself will dramatically be more effort intensive. So it will but there is only one way. I mean, you have to do this because you can't move the data around, right, for privacy reasons, for cost reasons, and so on, because a lot of the newer applications, for example, are in emerging countries with very weak networks.
Mhm.
So if you want to do language translation on the device on your phone in the middle of Africa, let's say, you can't get that audio signal all the way back to the your cloud center and then bring back the results. That it's not realistic. So you would do 10,000 optimizations to make this work, and that whole deployment will be very slow and very complex. So there are different dimensions. I think this is a very exciting area actually, because lots of room for creativity here. Thanks,
Yeah.
Vishwas.
Yeah. So in this context, would you like to highlight as the challenges due to COVID? I'm sure that you have faced
Uh,
some challenges and organizations are also facing. So what's your view on that? The challenges that
I
we
think
have been.
the COVID has been actually very good for us at Scribble. One reason is that now it has become possible for you to do business worldwide. I counted that in 2020, we pitched to customers across some 25 countries, all the way
Mhm.
from Brazil, Mexico, Kenya, East Africa, Netherlands, Germany. I mean, the sheer range of the countries where we were pitching was dramatically higher, and the reason is that it became acceptable for you to do business over Zoom. When you're on Zoom, it doesn't matter whether you're in next street or three continents away. So I think that and data lends itself to some of these things. The big issue became what the COVID brought up is the question of trust in this, the people, the data, the models, and so on, because a lot of your COVID modeling went wrong, and that gave the impression to a lot of people that unless we are really sure, we should not be trusting all of these people with fancy degrees and these fancy technologies, and so on. I think that that will correct itself over a period of time as we see more realistic applications and so on. But one thing I want your audience to take away, one reason I believe that next 5-10 years, this adoption of data science will dramatically increase, in my opinion, is that I saw a almost like a race, worldwide race to get onto the data science bandwagon, right? People from all sorts of places were actually coming, were looking at models, and I was struck by who these people were, what they were doing earlier, why are they getting into data science, and it is happening everywhere. So that will accelerate the whole deployment of data science in the next few years.
So we have two questions we need to take,
Yeah.
Venkata. So Rajesh C. Reddy asks about how do new adopters come up with changing DS landscape? And Vishwas, we will answer your question. We'll come back to you
Yeah,
again. So
yeah.
yeah.
Great question, Rajesh. I even being academic with fancy degree and thinking data and technology every day, I find it overwhelming, right? But I would say one thing which has really helped us keep our sanity, which is always try and ask what is permanent, what is deep, profound, and what is superficial. What I mean by that is there are some problems that will continue to exist 10 years from now, right? So, whenever you see a technology, an idea, a proposal, a team coming up, you want to ask, are they solving a problem for 2022? Are they solving a problem that is going to be there for the next 10 years? So that allows you to prioritize. There is we are overloaded with information. The only thing that you can do is prioritization, and the tool that we use is an assessment of whether this is core or um, surface, if you will, right? And we are very interested in the core problems, for example, the knowledge management that we were talking about earlier. This is not going away, it's only going to increase. Imagine having 10 models and you one day somebody asking what is in model number 3 and version number 25, right? What exactly is that doing, and is it doing well and not well, and so on. So this is a, because it is addressing a human limitation, right, of dealing with all of this complexity and coping with it, and so on. So this we see as a core problem that is going to be persistent over a long period of time. The user experience, for example, they will keep changing, because that user experience assumes that uh, we have a good understanding of the problems. We know that that understanding will change over the next like 2 years, 3 years. So the UX is expected to look very different. There are things. So don't go with the fads of the day, right? We have seen the fads coming and going. They're happening faster every single day. So deep learning is already on the decline, because like 2 years back they were declaring victory and says that like, deep learning is everywhere, right? The first thing that got chopped off when COVID happened was deep learning, because it's very expensive, very complex, and they had limited time, resources, and the data was changing too fast. The drift that was mentioned by Vishwas was happening too fast. And so you had to have simple responsive models, right, for all of this. And you didn't even have a way to track the drift. You didn't even know how the models were emerging. So my point here is that distinguish between what is important, what is interesting, what is permanent, what is transient. If you use that metric, then you can appropriately filter out the content and focus on what matters to you. And this is also the model drift and data drift that Vishwas asks. That problem is also real. What we are realizing is that the lifetime of the model is actually much shorter than we realized, and you have to effectively babysit these models continuously.
So
Now they're
monitoring and taking actions based on the results. Great thing.
model drift, data drift are are going to be core in this system. And the reason is very simple, which is that if your model is going to continuously degrade, and you don't know the degree to which it is degrading, and what impact it has on your business, eventually that team and the effort and the model will die. So there will be significant effort going into just watching what this models are doing, when what the how the data is emerging, and making sure that they're all in control, if you will. So if you look at I would strongly recommend you to go to paper from Scully, D. Scully in 2015 at New York IPS conference. It's called the high interest technical debt uh, in data or something like that. They have a picture. It says, okay, after 15 years of data science, they looked at how much effort was going where, and they put them in terms of boxes. Look at the sizes of the boxes. That should tell you what is important, what Google discovered as being important. And Google has discovered that data quality, data drift, monitoring these models, these are all where the 90% of the effort goes.
Mhm.
So that's where
So,
our, again, this is one more place where our original ideas from 2015, 2017, they're all proven to be wrong. We thought that model was everything.
so you talked about the technical part of it, right? That there needs to be babysitting, technical steps to monitor the model. So from the business side of it, what people or what things people should be aware of, and what should organizations also take into actions
Yeah,
for
yeah.
doing this
So
analysis?
absolutely, absolutely. I think the business can't say that we have an old culture and a new technology. That doesn't work, right? They have to adapt to the model-driven way of doing business. There was a very interesting talk by Domino's CEO about couple of years back. Just check their check the. I think it is called Rev 2020, and fantastic talk about these model driven organizations. So the big thing I have to suggest around this incorporation of this model into the rest of the organization is that um, going forward, machine learning is going to be part of your decision infrastructure, and you're going to take very significant bets going forward. For example, this returns person is going to use recommendations from a machine learning to decide how to plan the furniture category for the next few months, and that is going to be a very expensive activity. So first one is business should get involved in data science, right? Not at the technical level, but at the level of steering this whole activity. The second one should be your goal should be trust, right? The problem is that you are now offloading a bunch of decision work to machines, models, data, and so on. You have to build a team and a process and everything else to make sure that you can actually believe the outputs of the models, and you can go to sleep, right? And it is not I mean, we had a situation in Zillow, for example, where they had to write down some $900 million because of disconnect, right? It wasn't that the technology was bad or the people were stupid and so on. It is just that using machine learning within the organization is a lot more trickier than people realized, and there is no shortcuts. You have to sit down, understand, and manage the risks emerging from that. And the third thing is uh, hire the right people, right? People who there are people who are fascinated by endless technologies. Those are not the people that you want in your organization. The people that you want in your organizations are those very skilled ML engineers and data engineers who actually understand that their role is to drive business and not build technology for its own sake. And they don't mind sitting down with you and asking what is furniture business and trying and understanding, so that from there they distill it and turn it into a series of technology choices, a series of these model choices, and so on. So first, they should get involved. Second, evolve your own culture. Three, get involved with hiring of the right people, right partners for this whole thing. Until now, they said this is all magic box. We don't want to get involved. That is, and then suddenly they're realizing that it doesn't actually serve the purposes of the organization. And this relates to what Rajesh is also asking, that serious cultural changes are necessary, right? And and it will be forced on you. If you don't do it, your competitors will do it. There is a fantastic article by Professor Amy Zegart of Stanford. She's into military intelligence and all of those kinds of things, but there are yet another organization like many others, and they talk about how the world is changing and what they are essentially, so there is this five more search for five mores, and you'll find this fantastic interview where she has distilled the hyper competitive business environment that we are going to be, right? You're going to make more decisions, you're going to make more risky decisions, you're going to do them faster, and more number of people in your organizations are going to make these decisions. So you are talking about entering into a new era of business. So data science is going to be critical to that. If you don't do it, no worries, somebody else will do it, right? You'll be out
So
of business.
in this context, would you like to highlight that how that you have seen how feature store have evolved over the years? Because
Correct,
you
correct.
were you have been 2012, 17, and now what's we should be looking for?
So I would pop up one level and talk about data science as a whole, right? Where the data science was seen as an elitist activity. Only you take the most hardest mathematical problems and then give it to them, right? Give it to these data science teams and they will do. And in some cases, like Uber, they have basically the entire organization is data driven, so they use data very and they have like thousands of these models doing this computation of all kinds. So I think that was a conceptual model. I am not sure that it is even working for them, that degree of complexity, because Uber, has written down the highest amount of losses for any company any time in history, right? Some 25 or 30 billion dollars, right? And much of this is because a lot of this infra is not driving business, right? So that said, I think where data science, in my opinion, is going is that data science is now getting much more deeply embedded into the businesses. I was talking to a major bank. The bank guys, like always, used to do the risk modeling and all of those things. One day, the business came and told them, "Stop doing any more risk. I think we have Pareto optimal. We have reached it. We don't want to put in more effort into this. What we want you to do," and they talked about a couple of problems that were highlighted by the business. The business signs a lot of contracts. I want you to, they were telling, the business was telling the data science team to go look at all of these contracts to figure out whether we are using making the best use of our money, right? Figure out frauds, figure out ways of simplifying the whole process, and so on. Suddenly, they're taking the data science team from this abstract problem and putting them bang in into a core contracting problem within the organization. Then they give them another problem. So this was very fascinating having this conversation with the data science team, how their agenda itself changed in about 2019 time period. So the second thing that they said is, we have 10,000 people staff. I want you to tell me I want you to help me optimize the seating. I want them to sit properly, right? Earlier, this it was done by interior designers and so on, that did not reflect a lot of domain knowledge about how interactions actually happen within the teams. Can you use your data science to model interactions and optimize the layout of your office? Right, this was that was for a 10,000 people company. Now suddenly what I'm saying is that now data science is getting deeply embedded into operations of this company. And I started this seeing this trend in about 2019. Initially it was fits and starts only at the highest end companies. Now increasingly it is the part of the conversation. So when you come in to a loan management company, your goal is to improve our collection rates, or your goal is to improve the fairness of our allocation, and so on. So it is not that you are going to build some optimal real time anything, right? You're starting with the business objectives. So that is, I think, that has happened very significantly. It has happened at the data science level. It is happening also at the feature store level. And what we do and how we do as Scribble is a reflection of this change in the industry. Today, for example, our conversations with our customers are all around use cases. What use case you have, how much time do you have to deliver it in, what resources you have, and let's figure out something that works within this context. It is not about millisecond, it's not about petabytes, it's not about random forest or any this algorithm, that algorithm, or fancy features and so on, right? That should already tell you how much shift has happened, and this will continue for a few more years.
Yeah, another question
Yeah,
is like,
insights
could
from
you share some insights
yeah.
that you got from some of your customers or your firm? I think he was asking this question related to COVID data drift, model drift. So, what was the
Yes, yes.
reaction you have seen? How businesses reacted to that?
No, I think so. The last 2 years, I think there was a very significant tussle between the data teams and the business teams, because data teams were building ever more complex models, complex infrastructure that were taking a lot of resources, and COVID hit many of these companies really badly. A customer of mine went from revenue of 100 to 5 in 2 days' time. And so at that time, they were looking at each other and saying, now what are we going to do? Forget model drift. The data does not even make sense anymore, right? You stop looking at the data. So they have to build from scratch at that point in time the 5% market world, right? 5% revenue world. And then that went to 3x of the revenue within 6 months' time. Now, if you're not looking at data drift, you are doing something wrong, right? Um, uh, so the insights from our customers are first thing, uh, the what wasn't working, the very complex models, very complex infrastructures, high expensive stuff was not working, right? They need to move. The second thing that was actually working very well is wherever the business involvement was very significant, the impact was dramatic, right? Because from the get go, they were saying that I want this kind of model only because I know the impact. I can go convince my stakeholder in my in the peer in my company to actually use your model. I will make sure that the loop is closed and we iterate very fast. And there are massive amounts of inefficiencies in companies, in my opinion, right? Because we are still, we have a very old process, very manual process, expert driven process, and so on. There are lots of flaws with that. So I have found that wherever the business is actively involved in shaping the data science, the impact has been dramatic. And if they don't get involved, there is this siloed banging of heads against each other and things like that. The second thing that I we learned very significantly is major data quality issues. A lot of the models assume a good data set, and sometimes it requires you to go re-engineer your application to get the kind of data that is actually usable. So the data management, data quality, data privacy, anything to do with the data as an asset, dramatically the attention shifted to that managing that asset. So it's not a surprise that Monte Carlo got funded by so much for observability. Um, all the some of the DVC and those kinds of companies are also doing well. It is not an accident, because one of the big learnings that has happened in the last 2 years is the importance of data itself. Data, now there is this phrase that Andrew Ng has made very popular, which is the data centric ML. Uh,
Mm,
my view is it was always data centric to begin with, because the much of the heavy lifting was done by the underlying data, the quality, the richness, the availability, and so on, and the models kept evolving. Right, this came out of my own experience. I was heading data for a marketing data science organization, and I saw this thing. Right, so it's not an accident that Scribble is involved in feature engineering, because that is where I saw the most amount of value being created. Once you have a rich, available, trustworthy data set, you can drive 10 use cases with 10 models. That becomes much easier to do.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I have a question regarding the future vision. So, how do you think that robotics, IoT, AI, VR, along with that, feature stores are also going to evolve in the way, or there are changes in practices, how data is seen? Yeah, I think you have already talked about how data is going to change the landscape if we are making
Hmm.
right value of the data. But how do you see this? Because when robotics, IoT, VR, we are so many things we are trying to combine for the future. There are a lot of interdependencies also involved,
Yeah,
and maybe the architecture also becomes too complex. So how
correct.
to simplify things and what is your vision on this?
So two, three thoughts, right? I go back to Everett's technology diffusion model, right? So in 1960s, they were talking about how actually technology diffuses in a larger society. I think we have gone beyond early adopters for data science, and now we are getting into the 95th to about 70th percentile adopters, and this will be a major uptake in the. So data science is set for the next 10 years, in my opinion. The IoT also will grow very fast because of the kinds of problems. On Monday, I'm talking to somebody who wants to use this to optimize the motors so that we improve the environmental sustainability metrics, right? Um, Now I see that also happening because of the big macro level drivers. VR robotics had turned out to be much more complicated and messier. I mean, I knew a lot of robotics guys going back to 2000s, and now this is like it's just around the corner. I think there are it's a lot more complex engineering as well as operations. I think it will still be the uptake will be in very narrow use cases. For example, the drones and so on, where there will be set configurations and all the complexity will be relatively manageable. The general purpose humanoid robots, that is it is they're still at the research project stage. It will take a long time. um, the so I- but one thing we can say, which is that um, the internet has dramatically democratized access to ideas and technology. So if there are good ideas, the diffusion will happen really, really rapidly, right? As a result, we are looking at a very accelerated, volatile next 10 to 15 years, in my opinion. And drones is a perfect example, right? We can go into the details of it. Suddenly, it is everybody's agenda, and everybody is building very large scale, drone systems. So it is happening. So my larger suggestion is that I mean, having seen through technology cycles, I think it will come from the left field. What is the big idea? We won't know it until actually it happens. And anybody who has predicted has generally got it wrong. So, but look for volatility, high degree of ups and downs in the next few years.
So
So,
Rajesh asked another questions. Yeah, you want to continue? Yeah.
Generic
Or the,
framework for data science governance. See, there are Rapid Miner and a few other folks have come up with a um, data science process and things like that, but they're like far too academic, in my opinion. Um, I'm a much more of a stronger believer in uh, things like OKRs, proper documentation practices, and CI/CD systems, and those kinds of things, in my opinion. Data science governance will, yeah, we still have to figure out what all, what all needs to be done there. Um, it's whenever so what is happening is that either it is too broad or too narrow. We can't seem to right size this governance based on the different levels of companies, complexities, experiences, and so on. So
I think it is a
we've
mix and match of data engineering tools and putting them into a way that data science can also use it. Evolving from ML flow, metrics
Correct, correct.
monitoring.
So these are tools where you express. So the big thing that I see as required by whatever framework that you have is that data science as a domain is really an exercise in end-to-end discipline, discipline in thought, discipline in your tooling and your product choices and things like that. So I see that. Uh, this discipline is at individual tool level, it is moving forward, At a process level, there is a bunch of thought. I've been exchanging on LinkedIn quite a few messages with folks on how to think about data. Yesterday, we were talking about philosophy of data and all of those kinds of things. I think it will take more thinking. There is no ready framework, and most of these are, I think, irrelevant. Also, they're not reflective of the real challenges that people have. The we still need collectively more experience as a community for all of that.
So thank you so much,
Any other
Venkat.
questions?
We are almost running out of time. We had a
Oh,
very nice discussion, detailing from data science, organization, what they should do for the future of data science, evolving frameworks, roadmap, and whatnot about feature stores evolution, challenges, SubML. So I think the audience had a wonderful learning. I will keep on sharing this on all social media, and I can't thank you more. So pleasure to have
thank
you here.
you. Thank you, Sharmisha, for inviting me. I appreciate the time you have given me. I definitely am. We as a company and I as an individual are generally open to a lot of these conversations. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and drop me random message. Any question that you have. If our experience is there to give some input, we'll almost certainly share. We are a very open company.
Yeah. So I have also shared the link that what are you doing about Scribble Data, and how people can directly reach out to you if they have any questions,
Absolutely.
um, and people can just connect to you in LinkedIn. And if you can find contacts who would be help for you, either of you, it's great to know that. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
I'll keep you posted. I think
Yeah.
these kinds of community conversations, more of them need to happen because we're all figuring out together what we need to do and how. So, thank you and have a
Thank you.
great Saturday, all of you.
Yeah. Same to you. Thank you, doctor.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.